of trust in maybe every single system that we rely on has permeated our culture pretty dramatically, and people are looking for alternatives. And that's why in a 24-month relatively bear market in this industry, the hall is full, right? Because people are looking for alternatives. I'm just going to hand you this one, Natalie. Where does the world go from here in terms of trust and currency?
Well, I look at this room and you're absolutely right. I mean, people are looking for sources to trust, and there are so many now. I mean, media has fragmented, information's fragmented, and I think that there is such a loss of values as well. I mean, this has permeated society to a really, really deep level, and people are looking out for hope. And so I think that there's a good reason why there's just this turn to sound money and hard money. More attention is being placed on both gold as well as alternative digital assets like Bitcoin. And I think that will continue, because the alternative, again, on the other side is they will need to print, because our entire system is built on credit. The fractional reserve banking is to an extent where, what was it, when the Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, they didn't have like 5% of what they needed to have when the bank run started. So I mean, the money that you are all transacting with doesn't physically exist. The debt is insolvent. We can never pay it back. We have to print, we have to inflate our way out of it, which means for the average person, they desperately have to find something that will retain purchasing power. They need to find scarce assets. And that's why I do find so much hope in Bitcoin, because it dematerialized property. It put it into cyberspace where it can live forever, for 1,000 years, and you can rely on it. Yes, it's volatile in the short term, but I would argue that it's actually the US dollar and these other fiat currencies that, as they're weakening over time, they are what is volatile, reflected in the Bitcoin price, because one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. So I think more and more people will turn to these alternatives. I think the education is so important, right? Because the average person, to Robert's earlier point, does not get the financial literacy education they need. We're not taught in school how money printing works, the history of money, fractional reserve banking, and the things that really affect your life on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you can't walk out the door without spending 20 bucks, right? Or 50 bucks, or whatever it is. I mean, today it's more expensive than ever. Money is at the base layer of all of our interactions. And so you need to have a money that doesn't lose its purchasing power, one that you can trust, one that's decentralized, that's in cyberspace, not controlled or manipulated by anyone, and one that can't just be inflated so that your purchasing power decreases every year. So,
do you think it's an inevitability that we trend towards a central bank issued digital currency? I think about this as, Mark, I might hand this back to you because this is kind of your pocket, but inevitable, right? We digitize everything. Central bank issued digital currency would hand a ton of power over to the issuers of currency, so it's in the best interest for them to go this direction. I can't think of one reason why we're not going to be in that world as soon as 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's the only reason why we wouldn't is if the people kind of push back enough, but that's probably not enough to hold the tide back on that. So I would agree. Well, what's interesting about this is if you look at, what Christine Lagarde says, head of the IMF over there, or the ECB now, she was convicted criminal at the IMF, head of the ECB over there, and you look at even Bank of Canada, but really what she said is that, well, the people want digital money. That's what they want. Look, they're trying these things like cryptocurrency, so we should give them digital money. That'd be much better. And so we need to give them a CBDC. You have the BIS putting out papers saying that the people need this. This is what they want. This is what they're trying to do, but there will never be trust with this money unless it's issued from a central bank. So we must give it to them. That's how deranged they are. Like the WEF is saying that we must restore trust by censoring you. And so, yeah, so they're so deranged. So they think that's what we want, and they're going to give it to us. They also need it. They need it for control. They need it for injecting liquidity and things like that. I would say, though, as bad as it is, and as scary as it is, and as almost certain as it is, it's probably not that scary because we have alternatives to that. And if there wasn't an alternative, then it would be kind of hopeless. But I think that if anything, it actually helps us all move to a new system, right? At some point, a lot of people in the developed world don't understand the problem we have with money. If you go to Argentina or Venezuela or Lebanon, you don't have to tell them why their money is bad or broken. But here, maybe in Canada and the US, we don't understand that. But once the government moves into a central bank digital currency, it sort of legitimizes a digital currency. oh, now I'm using it, it must be okay, the government gave it to me. And then I'm able to see it in real time against another asset like Bitcoin. Why does the central bank digital currency cost me more things to buy the good or service, and Bitcoin cost me less to buy the good or service? Why is that working? And why does the central bank digital currency limit what I can spend on? Oh, I can't buy steak today? Oh, no more gas in my car? But I can spend my Bitcoin. And so I think it's gonna be glaringly obvious what the differences are, and right now it's not. And I think, unfortunately, we move in our own self-interest, and we need a little bit more pressure in order to move, and I think central bank digital currencies will certainly be that pressure.
Now, you talked about values a little bit, so did you, Mark, and maybe they're lacking right now. And this morning on this stage, we spoke a lot about the cycles of empire, and what do you see at the beginning, the emergence of an empire, when you see the ascent to power, what has to be present in the culture. And the first thing is values, right? The population has to be aligned in their values. It doesn't matter so much what they're aligned on. It can be cultural, political, religious, doesn't matter. But if they're aligned, they'll cooperate, and they won't constantly fall back into infighting and stall the growth of the nation, which happens far more frequently. But that alignment has to go all the way to the top, right? You've got to be governed in such a way that rewards productivity, similar values. Obviously, oppressive, corrupt government stymies all of that. When we think through, and I don't know how many of you were at the talks this morning where we covered the red flag activities we see during the declining years of the empire, the financial insolvency, internal unrest, and external competitors. But we painted a picture that's kind of dire for the balance of this decade. So how do you structure your portfolio right now if we're heading towards what is probably the most volatile decade of my life? I mean, I'm looking at 40, I'm almost 40, right? So my whole life has been increased globalization and relative stability, right? I think that's maybe gonna change, and the next decade might be a bit less predictable than the previous 4. So walk me through your portfolios right now. How are you protecting your wealth? Where are you looking for upside, right? And Robert, I'll start with you.
Okay, now, glad you guys are here. But sitting out there, the reason I like this conference was 20 years ago, I was one of those guys. I was a little miner, a junior miner, a startup. And we struck this probably about $20 billion companies out there. And they're sitting right in front of you. But if you cannot analyze what a $1 billion company looks like, then you're the risk. So I know I started a $1 billion company, and I took it public on the Toronto Stock Exchange. And as soon as we struck gold in China, the Chinese nationalized it. And I lost my first $1 billion business. But it gave me a taste of it. So I just like to say to you guys, it's right out there. And I would say your job, and that's why I love what you're doing, Jay, is your job is to go find the good deals from the bad deals. There's several $1 billion companies out there, but if you don't know what they look like or who they are, their management teams and what the assays are, then you're the risk. But there's more opportunity ever before, because we all know the macro. I could go into the Fed and all this and talk about the macro, but the micro is here today. Sitting out there are some $1 billion companies that can make you richer than your wildest dreams. So I come back here, Jay, for me. I come to look at those deals out there, and I encourage you all to do the same.
I'll take that. I like it, Robert. Thank you very much. Ronnie, same question over to you. What does your portfolio look like right now? Where are you hedged? Where are you playing offense? And where are you playing defense?
We're running 6 different funds, so the strategies are obviously different. But I think counterparty risk is, coming back to that topic, is crucial. So this is why we chose Liechtenstein as our jurisdiction, a very small country, a neutral country, having the Swiss franc country, one of 5 countries globally without any government debt. They actually make a surplus every year. So that's, from our point of view, having our assets and our funds at really reliable banks in a safe jurisdiction, that's as good as it gets, probably. We've got a couple of funds that hold physical gold outside of the banking system. We've got our Bitcoin in cold storage. If there's a complete loss of trust, really the end of the world, then I think that our asset allocation will be our least concern. Then we're going to talk about different problems. However, I think we shouldn't be like in this let's say the gold community, we shouldn't be too pessimistic. Whenever I travel to Asia, I see so much positive vibes, so much optimism, so much growth, so much motivation from young entrepreneurs. Similar in the Bitcoin scene. There's like so many young people that really now understand how our system works, what a corrupt monetary system does, and they're working against that. They're seeing opportunities, they're seeing possibilities, how to make business, how to make the world a little bit better. So I would say I'm an eternal optimist. Yeah, I've got small kids. Yeah, I cannot be too pessimistic. But of course, I mean, hope for the best, prepare for the worst is something that always works. I think gold is a part of the answer. I've got a Roman denarius here. This is a coin that is 1,500 years old, and it still protects my purchasing power. I think that the people here sitting in this audience probably know much more than 99% of the rest of the people, because people here are actually, they are thinking about all those problems that we're facing, about the flaws in our monetary system, and being prepared for that. I think that's already a major step.
Interesting that you chose Liechtenstein. Did you say it's one of 5 countries with no federal debt? I think, Robert, you got a jet in Liechtenstein, already loaded with gold, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, just in case.
Last year, I made a complete ass of myself. They said, what's your best investment? I said, a Layer 60 or a G4, so I can get out of this country. I've already moved my gold into Liechtenstein. I don't trust my government. I don't know, you guys trust Biden, it's up to you. But I moved it out of this